guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. I want to have a discussion with you guys today about one knife for life. Now, this is a bit of a follow-up to a previous, I've done a series of videos a little while ago, and a number of you watched them and commented. We had a lot of fun with sort of making recommendations for if you had to pick one knife that everyone could have and you just kind of magically poof it into everyone's pocket. And at that time, you may recall that the Para 2 did very, very well. I've got a couple here, the S35 VN Sprint Run and the Blade HQ Jade and M4. And this was the knife that kind of won out in that whole discussion. There were lots of other knives that came up, and it was a long list of knives. And from that, I drew some interesting conclusions. Okay, so let's start off by saying, if someone said to me, Kevin, out of these knives on the table, pick up one, or maybe you have to like close your eyes and pick one, but pick up one and you're stuck carrying it for the rest of your life. This is the only knife you're going to have from now on. Which one of these knives would you pick up? Now, I would love to have you guys fill in the same question. You may not know what every single one of these knives are, but I will name them kind of as we work through. We've got I'll try to get through a few of them right now. Cold Steel American Lawman, Hinder XM18, Cold Steel AD10. Obviously, we've got a couple of paramilitary 2s here. We've got a Rat Model 1. We've got a Civivi Backlash. We've got a Manix 2 Lockback. We've got a Swiss Army knife. Ultimate Hunter, Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter. Oh, you can't even see this one. So we've got the Chris Reeve knives in Cosi. We've got Benchmade Crooked River, size large. Crewwear Shaman. We 037. Civivi Elementum. Have I missed any? American Lawman. I think I mentioned. I think that's all the knives. So just to kind of get that out of the way. But if you had to pick one of these knives, you pick it up off the table, you put it in your pocket, you walk away, and all the other knives disappear, and you're stuck carrying that knife for the rest of your life. Which one would it be? Okay, and I want to begin by going through some of my preferences, and I'd love to have you share your preferences. If there's something that you really look for that I don't bring up, I would love to have you share it, because there could be somebody watching this who would really benefit from that comment. So the first thing I look for, one of the things I look for in this is pretty obvious, is the blade. So I want a blade that I feel like gives me enough length to do most of the cutting tasks that I need my blade to do. I want it to be balanced. I want it to be, thick enough that it's confidence inspiring, but I want it to be thin enough that I can do some cutting with it. A knife has to cut as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a big fan of folding pry bars. The blade stock has to be thick enough that I don't feel always nervous that I'm going to break it, or that there's certain things I don't want to cut because oh man, I don't know if my knife can take that. I don't like that feeling, and I don't want to experience that with the knife that I'm going to be carrying forever and ever. It's a different story if it's strictly a gentleman's knife, but that's not what we're talking about. If it's going to be one knife forever, you don't have that option of having multiple different knives with you. So it's got to be pretty well balanced in terms of the blade. Now, I'm pretty careful with blades. I know the rules. I don't break the rules. And so I don't need something that, I'm not going to pound it into a tree with a hammer and then stand on it, right? I wouldn't do that. But I want it to be robust enough that I feel pretty comfortable. All right, I want a reliable and usable lock. So does it have to be the triad lock? No, it definitely doesn't have to be the triad lock, but I do want a lock that inspires confidence. I want a lock that I can use pretty easily and quickly. And so perhaps in some cases that's going to move me away from the triad lock, but I want a lock that I can rely on and that I can use quickly and easily whenever I want to. Generally speaking, now this is not entirely a hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, I want a pretty decently stainless steel. Now I've got a couple of knives here that break that. So do I like M4? Yes, I do. Would I want it on the knife that I'm going to carry forever? I actually wouldn't mind my forever knife being M4, because I'm pretty careful about how I treat my steel. I guess the one drawback would be if you get into a situation where you're going to need something highly stainless. And so I would lean toward probably more stainless rather than less. So I'm not saying that I would just immediately cross anything in M4 or any non-stainless steel off the list, but it would definitely be a consideration that I would be, weighing carefully. All right. I'd want pretty normal looks. I wouldn't want something that's really, really outlandish, way out there. Something like something designed, say, by Elijah Isham, where the looks are a real feature of the knife. I probably wouldn't want that because, although I like some knives that look very, very different, overall, I find I may get tired of that or want something a little bit, having a knife that's really, really distinct can be great for a collector, but probably for your average everyday knife, you don't want it. Then, of course, we haven't really talked about a comfortable handle. So I want a handle that feels really, really nice in hand. That if I need to do a lot of hard work, I'm not thinking, oh man, I'm going to have blisters. Maybe I should get a pair of gloves on or something for this. I want a handle that allows me to feel comfortable even with prolonged cutting tasks. All right, so that's definitely going to be one of my major considerations. And I've said this before, but one of the things that puts me off of the really small knives, all right, usually my rule is 3.5-inch blade. And part of that rule is if you have a 3.5-inch blade, you've got a decent sized handle and you're going to have a bit of comfort, which is something that I really like. And a knife that I feel like I can't get a hold of really well, that puts me off. Here's the Civivi Elementum. This actually is not bad, but this is right on the borderline. I definitely wouldn't want to go any smaller than this. And you can see this is just barely a 4-finger knife. And so to me, that's a major consideration. I don't want anything smaller than that. By the way, you probably have to consider your circumstances and your uses a little bit, but something like a Swiss Army knife, it wouldn't be the worst choice ever. And now this one would probably be the worst choice because it's huge and fat and crazy. But you would, this is kind of here because the reason I keep this is because it has like every tool a Swiss Army knife comes with almost. And so it works as a great example no matter what I want to talk about. But a knife in this size, just really, really thin down, I think would be a decent EDC option. I would be more inclined to lean toward my Forester, which I don't happen to have with me. As I say, I just kind of grabbed a number of knives to have this discussion. Okay, and that's where perhaps this is a bit of a trick question, guys. So I'd look for all that stuff for sure. All right, but if you were waiting for me to start eliminating these knives, that's really not what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm going to go the opposite direction here, and I would love to have you disagree with me. I'm more than happy for you to disagree with me down in the comments. But here is my assertion in this video. My assertion would be that there are tons and tons and tons of knives that would work as your one and only knife for the rest of your life, right? Could you get by just fine with a pair of two? Well, clearly most people think that you could because that was the knife that won our contest. Yeah, you absolutely could. And if someone said, Kevin, you're stuck carrying a pair of two for the rest of your life, I'd be like, hey, that's fine. What about a Mannix or some variation of the Mannix? This happens to be my favorite one. I just find it a little more hand-filling. I like the ergonomics on this one the best. But yeah, if someone said, this is your knife from now on, I'd be totally, totally fine. Same is true of this guy. Same is true. This is Benchmade Crooked River. Same is true of the Recon 1 and many, many others. The 8010 over here, the XM18. Yeah, I'd be totally fine. Perhaps we'd start to get into, I'm not so sure if we are talking about the Civivi Elementum. There are a number of reasons, and you'll hear. The next thing I want to talk about first, actually, let me go through the list. So I think pretty much all of these knives on the table I would be fine with. I may not be as satisfied as a knife snob, if I ended up carrying the Civivi Backlash for the rest of my life, it's fine, all right? There are other knives I like a little bit more, but this one, oh, wow, such a nice knife. Sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted by that, but this is a really great knife. And would it serve me fine for the rest of my life if this was the only knife I could have? Yeah, for sure. I could easily get by just fine with the Civivi Backlash from now on. Would I rather maybe pick something like this or this? Probably. But That's my main point. My point is, what about the Rat Model 1? Could I carry this for the rest of my life? Sure I could. Right? There wouldn't really be any situations that I can think of readily where I'd go, "Oh man, I'm just woefully unprepared because I'm stuck with this Rat Model 1." Okay. Now, there are some things that I would avoid, and some of these knives, I guess not really. Some of these knives get close to some of the characteristics that I would try to stay away from. So first of all, um, really, really budget steels. Okay, so stuff like HCR 13, OS 8, 420, even 440C. I wouldn't really want those knives, and of course 440A and some of those other that you find are even worse. I wouldn't really want a lot of those steels. I want something, if it's going to be my only knife from now on, I want something a little better than that. I wouldn't even want, D2, okay, is fine. And you can see I've had this knife for years. It has no rust on it. I don't really have a problem with D2 rusting. However, I have heard plenty of stories, and we've actually seen on some of the testing videos that there are some D2 knives out there that just aren't maybe finished as well as they could be. So the heat treatment is a little bit lacking. But a well heat treated D2, hey, I'd be fine with that. 9CR 18 MOV, yeah, I think I'd be fine with that as well. That's now into sort of the next step up. So for steel, I would be wanting, 9CR18, VG10, 14C28N, 154CM, anything, Slepner, whatever. Any of those mid-grade steels, I'd be totally happy with. No, they're not going to hold an edge as well as a really well heat treated M390 or 20CV or something like that. And I do like those a little bit more. But again, this is not my own preferences. This is the knife that I could easily deal with for the rest of my life. And frankly, you probably could live with HCR 13 MOV, but you would have to sharpen it. If you use your knife a lot, you would eventually have to replace the blade. You'd actually sharpen it that much, right? That you'd get to a point where it just wasn't effective because you'd sharpened away so much. So let's see, what other things would I avoid? Knives, we've already said this, knives that put form over function. I would definitely be leaving those behind. Fancy knives with a lot of high-end materials and, that really, really push the pocket jewelry. This knife, it's got a little bit of pocket jewelry-ishness to it. And so does this knife here. And they would not be on the top of my list for that reason. Now, this is 9CR Damascus, so, decent performance, not amazing. What else? Anything you love too much to use, anything that would be really a safe queen, that's not going to be very effective. Anything really specific, okay? And we talked about this with the blade overall, but, I don't want, let's say, a knife that's designed to be a fillet knife. I don't want a knife that's designed to be a survival knife, because those are kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. I don't want a Scandi grind or, a strict bushcraft knife. I want something that's generic, something that's going to kind of be a jack of all trades. So I'd stay away from really specific use blade designs. Let's have a conversation here about bearings. Would I cross bearings off the list? I've got a couple of knives here with bearings. We've got this guy, we've got this guy, happen to both be WE knives. But you could add zero tolerance to this list. You could add Riot, you could add tons and tons of knives. So the short answer is no, I wouldn't exclude bearings from the list. However, it would maybe give me a moment of hesitation, okay? The other thing is I wouldn't exclude anything really expensive from the list. So somebody might go, well, yeah, you don't want this knife. Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind having this knife. If I'm going to use it forever, right, then yeah, that's fine. And actually, this is a knife that lends itself to that proposition because it's designed to last about that long. All right, so something like this or like this, would I be happy with this as, now this is your last knife? Sure, I would. I'd be quite happy. And I think both of those would fit the role just fine. And so that's my bigger point here, guys, is that there are actually a lot of knives that fit this role pretty well. I know, the Para 2 is a great balanced knife, and we picked that for good reasons, but is it so far superior to all the other knives that are out here that, you just have to pick it? No, right? What about this? What about this? Okay, by the way, I think I need to do a comparison between these two knives because they are so similar that that's a discussion that I feel like needs to be had. Anyway, I might actually lean toward a shaman over a para two because you're not really carrying much more, but you're getting a slightly more robust blade. So if you do the kinds of jobs that require that, then you might say, you know what, a shaman isn't really that much harder to carry. If you know you may and so hey, I'll take the stronger blade. Now again, where we start to push the envelope would be with something like the 8010, where now you start to go, well, I don't know, do I want this every single day in my pocket? I would, but I know some of you out there watching would go, nope, sorry, Kevin, that one's going to be too big. And so, look, I'm not going to roll in pictures of all these knives, but I've got a quick list. I just took 5 minutes before this video and kind of wrote down all the knives that kind of sprung to mind that I would be fine if someone said, this is your last knife. The rat one we've already talked about. There are tons of similar options. As long as the heat treatment is good and the construction is good, you know, things like the cut jack, a number of other steel wheels as well. You know, lots of Bestecs and I'm trying, you know, there and Civivis and a few others would be just fine. Cold steel, of course, the American Lawman, the Code 4, Buck 830 Marksman would be a great knife. The Buck 110, in certain variations, would be fine. Of course, my favorite Buck 110 of all time is the Silver Fox from SK Blades in 20CV. That is a beautiful, beautiful knife, and yeah, just amazing. I always follow. Silver Knights. Silver Knight blades because they do some really, really cool stuff. And of course, their Buck 830 variants have been really, really nice. Spyderco Para 2, Para 3, absolutely fine. Any variation of the Mannix, probably just fine. Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter, Benchmade Super Freak. Yeah, the 20CV Griptilian again on that list. The Benchmade Bug Out probably would be fine. It's not my favorite knife. The Benchmade Bailout. Would you want to go with a Tanto? I'm not 100% sure. By the way, some of the others, I mentioned the Code 4 and we've mentioned the Recon 1. Of course, they are available in Tanto. And I don't know if I'd probably lean toward something with a belly just because it's a little better for food prep. At least I like it a little bit better. Not that a Tanto can't do food prep at all. It definitely can. Zero tolerance like the 0630, the 0640, the 0562, the 0909. Those are all, I think, blades that, you know, would be very, very good. Some of the Sinkovich knives I would leave off the list. I'm trying to think. The 0462, I think, is the knife I'm thinking of, where it's quite angular, it's got an upswept tip, sort of has that Persian style. That's a little too distinct for me. I want something a little more generic than that if I'm going to carry it forever. The XM18, sure, and all the variants of it. The Koenig Arius, I don't know why I didn't bring my Arius today, but it's a great option for this. Some stuff from Chris Reeve. The Hogue RSK, the essentially, you know, the Ritter grip that we used to talk about from Benchmade is now made by Hogue, and I think that's a great, great option. And so there are tons and tons of knives out there that I think would be fine for someone to say, you know, this is going to be my forever knife now. And some of you watching this may be looking for that one knife. Maybe you're not a knife enthusiast. Maybe you don't want to own, and I don't have very many knives here on the table, but maybe even this is too many for you. One of the things I considered here is if you're going to have that one knife forever, what about, you know, something really expensive? What about buying a custom? And having it made specifically to your desires. That definitely could be an option. Now with custom knives, there would be a few things I'd be worried about. The longevity of the design, you know, what kind of warranty does this custom maker have? What kind of extra parts are going to be available? So those are some considerations. A production company, you know, they've got baskets and baskets full of extra parts, and you know, even on a discontinued model, they're probably going to have parts for a long time. Where a custom knife, you know, you're not so sure about that. Even something Custom Knife Factory, I always wonder if the reason they send parts in the bag with it is because they're not planning to keep a huge stock of extra parts for warranty work. I don't know if that's the case, and probably it isn't, but that's certainly a consideration for a knife that you're going to own forever. All right. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts. And my overall suggestion here is that the fact is we tend to like obsess over the minutia of knives, and that's totally fun to do. And I really, really like doing that. As I said, I'm getting ready to do a comparison between this knife and this knife. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to obsess over every minor difference, and I'm going to talk about that with you. And that'll be a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, whichever one you pick is probably just fine. Okay, and so that's my overall conclusion here. And I'd love to hear you weigh in the comments. Am I completely nuts? I mean, I probably am, but am I completely nuts for this particular reason? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. Go ahead and use a link. I'm going to put a link to DLT Trading down here. DLT, I have an affiliate link with them, and that does help the channel an awful lot if you use that link. So I often, sort of move Justin to the top of the list over at White Mountain Knives, and he's a great guy, and I get a lot of knives from them, especially their shipping to Canada is fantastic. But let's go with DLT this time, since a lot of the knives that are here, they're going to have in stock over there, as well as a number of the ones that I mentioned on my long list. Again, if you want to add to that list, or if you want to share your list, I'd be happy to hear it. Thanks for watching once again, and we will talk to you soon.